Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. My name is Mohammed Qasim, Senior Specialist in the Promotion and Business Advisory Team at the Abu Dhabi Investment Office. I will be your moderator for the Inside Abu Dhabi Enhanced Musataha Agreement. Thank you all for joining us today. As you know, we recently finalized enhancements to the Musataha Agreement in order to maximize the benefits for both the private and the public sectors. And today, we're looking forward to sharing with you how you can make the most of these enhancements and discussing how we can partner to bring investment and opportunities to life together. First, allow me to give you a quick brief about Abu Dhabi Investment Office, ADIO. We are the government entity responsible for attracting and facilitating investment in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. Our objective is to enable opportunities for innovative investors and businesses of all sizes. And we do this through a number of programs, including financial and non-financial incentives. We also have tailored services and a lot of infrastructure partnerships. It is my pleasure to introduce to you today our distinguished speakers. Mr. Mohammed Al-Zahiri, he is the Head of Infrastructure Partnerships at ADIO. He leads our efforts to grow the Abu Dhabi economy through infrastructure partnerships and initiatives. Our second speaker of the day, Mr. Jamie Levy. Jamie is the ADIO's General Counsel. His legal background and global experiences have been key in advising and managing ADIO-related matters. He is also joined by Mr. Ali, who will also be discussing the same in legal counsel matters. So now we go, allow me to begin by, the floor is yours, Mr. Jamie. Sorry, Mr. Mohammed Al-Zahiri is with us. So Mr. Mohammed Al-Zahiri, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed, for this warm welcome. And again, good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here today to be talking about the enhancement on the Musataha Agreement. And just before we actually go into the actual enhancement on the Musataha Agreement, when Abu Dhabi Investment Office was tasked to actually enhance the previous Musataha Agreement, we thought to ourselves, what is the main objective that we want to achieve here? And of course, and obviously, our main objective as Abu Dhabi Investment Office is to increase the number of investment available in the government of Abu Dhabi. And in order to do that, we said that we need to create a Musataha Agreement that is investor friendly and that can be easily and flexibly used with all different sectors. And inshallah, as we go forward with this presentation, you will be able to see on all the different enhancement that has been done on this Musataha Agreement. So what is our role as Abu Dhabi Investment Office? Abu Dhabi Investment Office main role is to unlock investment opportunities within the government of Abu Dhabi. And one of these investment opportunities are the Musataha investment opportunities that are available. So if we want to talk like on a high level, what is a Musataha deal structure looks like? The Musataha deal is usually a land concession agreement that happens between the public sector and the private sector that can range from 10 years all the way to 50 years. And how does that happen is that the public sector will have the land. The public sector will give the rights to utilize the land to the private sector, and then the private sector will actually invest, finance, build, and operate that land. Now, the asset that is an output of this investment will be owned by the private sector, and the land will be maintained and the ownership with the public sector. Now, till the end of the concession agreement, the asset and the land themselves will go back to the public sector. And now, in order for this to be facilitated, the investor will have to pay a fixed Musataha fees to the public sector. Now, if we look generally on the Musataha, they are governed into three different main laws. We have the federal law that sits on top, and then we have the government of Abu Dhabi law that kind of regulate who can actually invest in a Musataha, and then we have the Musataha agreement, which we are talking about today, which actually facilitates the interaction between the public sector and the private sector. Again, the Musataha agreement is a type of partnership and a long-term engagement between the public sector and the private sector. Now, if we want to talk about a typical Musataha framework, so before we start, the Musataha opportunities can be generated from two different streams. Either that the landowner, which is the public sector in our case here, will identify a specific need that they want to actually achieve, and then they will go and seek the private sector to come and invest in these opportunities, or an investor will identify an opportunity and then seek a land from a landowner, which is, as we said, is the public sector. And the Musataha transaction comes in the middle to facilitate that in the way that the public sector will grant the rights to the investor to build, and the investor will be paying a fixed Musataha payment to the landowner. Now, we as Abu Dhabi Investment Office would be more than happy to help any investor who have any idea and then they want to engage with a specific public sector for a specific land. The benefits of the Musataha actually goes all the way to the public sector and the private sector. And if we will just zoom a little bit onto the public sector, the main objective for the government is to utilize the land that they have. And by utilizing them, by building a specific asset that can actually serve a specific community there. And now, these assets, when they will be generated, they will definitely create jobs. And by creating more jobs, we have a better and more sustainable economy. Now, the government, what it does now is it involves the private sector within this operation, and then it will give the private sector more opportunity to invest. And when they invest in Musataha, as we said previously, they will own the asset on top of the land, and that will enable them to actually go to the banks and get a better financing on that asset because they can actually mortgage the concession agreement. And during the Musataha, during the design and build out of the actual asset, the investor will not pay anything to the government until the actual asset is completed. Again, what I want to say here is that the Musataha contract is a win-win situation for both the public and the private sector. Thank you very much for listening, and I will be available for any further question.
Thank you, Mohammed, for that insightful presentation. Thank you very much. I'm sure our audience will have a lot of questions for you towards the end of the session. On that note, I would like the audience to kindly refer to the right corner of the screen in order to enter your questions. Our second session, Enhancements to the Musataha Agreement, will be conducted by Jamie, who will present to us the latest updates on the Musataha Agreement. He will be joined by Mr. Ali, who will echo the same in Arabic. Mr. Jamie, please join us on the panel and give us your insights.
Thank you, Mohammed and Mohammed. Good morning, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. It's our pleasure to present the new form of Musataha and to discuss with you today the key features of the enhancements made. The format of the next part of this presentation will be myself talking in English about these enhancements, and my colleague Ali Bayasin will talk with you in Arabic to ensure that we cover all of us on the call today. When we look at Musataha, we need to, I think, at a base level, understand what it is. And Mohammed gave a great introduction there as to what Musataha is. The English translation is roofing. Buildings on the land of another. So you'll see in the Civil Code that Musataha is set out very clearly as an in rem legal right, giving ownership rights over the assets built on land to investors to be able to form long-term partnerships with the government to bring about successful projects. And that's what we're here to talk about today. ADIO attracts and facilitates investment into Abu Dhabi, and Musataha is a key feature for ADIO and for the private sector to combine with government in delivery of successful projects in key areas. And our expectation is that the new form of Musataha agreements with some enhancements made really that reflect our listening to the markets and some flexibility that we'd like to provide in this relationship will give rise to many more successful projects in the future. Why now and why ADIO? Well, as I mentioned, ADIO does facilitate investment into Abu Dhabi. And we, under Law Number 2 of 2019, are the central entity responsible for the administration and regulation of the PPP program in Abu Dhabi. So ADIO is naturally positioned very well to support the government in its role, in its goals and objectives in relation to projects. And Musataha is a fantastic framework and tool for delivery of these projects. The Executive Council asked ADIO to issue this new form of agreement. And in doing so, as Mohammed mentioned, ADIO needed to deeply consider what it is we want the dawn of a new era of Musataha to look like. What do these engagements and relationships between the public sector and private enterprise, investors, project developers, owners and operators mean in this new era we are now in? So ADIO did conduct an extensive consultation exercise, both with government departments and with the private sector, to understand what both are now looking to achieve and how this new form of contract can be the conduit for that successful relationship to bind in the long term, delivering successful projects in Abu Dhabi. We realise that investors want more autonomy, less uncertainty, more flexibility, the introduction of new provisions around bank lending and financiers coming into the equation. And we realise that certainty really is required in order to bring about a greater interest in Musataha and the project relationships that will ensue under these agreements. So following that extensive consultation, ADIO has now released the new form of Musataha contract, and that is a contract that now is with each government entity and department. It is a template to be negotiated with each investor on a case-by-case basis. And today we will take you through the enhancements made to the form of Musataha contract, so you have a good understanding of what you can expect when engaging with a government department. And we hope that this provides you with a great basis for a fruitful discussion. Ali.
Thank you, Jamie. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. معكم المستشار القانوني علي عبد المجيد من مكتب أبو ظبي الاستثمار. راح أشارك المستشار العام جيمي ليفي وأشكر على المختصر في المقدمة اللي بخصوص عقد المصاطحة. راح نتكلم بشكل موجز إن شاء الله عن أبرز التعديلات التي طرأت وتمت إضافتها على عقد المصاطحة النموذجي. لكن قبل ما أبدأ في هذا الشرح راح يكون راح نعطي بس نبذة عن تعريف عقد المصاطحة أو تعريف مصطلح المصاطحة في القانون، في قانون المعاملات المدنية لدولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة رقم 5/1985 في المادة 1353، بحيث أن حق المصاطحة هو حق عيني يعطي صاحب الحق إقامة الحق في إقامة بناء أو غراس على أرض الغير. فبالتالي يصبح لدينا عقد المصاطحة مبين المعنى في القانون، لكن نحن لدينا هنا في إمارة أبو ظبي لدينا عقد مصاطحة نموذجي، فبالتالي هو ما يستخدم لدى الدوائر الحكومية والشركات المملوكة بالكامل لإمارة أبو ظبي. فعقد المصاطحة من أهم العقود، أهم العقود الاستثمارية الموجودة حاليا في إمارة أبو ظبي. فبالتالي لوجود إقبال كبير من المستثمرين على هذا النوع من العقود، قررت اللجنة التنفيذية في المجلس التنفيذي بتاريخ 14/4 للسنة الحالية بتخويل مكتب أبو ظبي للاستثمار لاعتماد النموذج النهائي لعقد المصاطحة، وبالتالي تعميمه على كافة الجهات الحكومية والشركات المملوكة بالكامل لإمارة أبو ظبي. فبالتالي بعد ذلك قمنا بإجراء دراسة مع جميع، أو لن نقول جميع ولكن معظم الشركات المملوكة بالكامل لإمارة أبو ظبي، وأيضا التعاون مع بعض الجهات الحكومية بخصوص عمل دراسة مقارنة ما بين النسخة الحالية والنسخة الماضية في بعض بنود العقد التي بعض المستثمرين واجهوا فيها بعض الإشكالات. فبالتالي قارناها مع احتياجات المستثمرين. نحن كآديو نريد أن ندعم المستثمر حقيقة، فبالتالي تم حصر النقاط المعينة في العقد ليتم عمل التحسينات عليها. فنعم بالفعل وجدنا بأن بعض النقاط لابد من تعديلها في هي بنود العقد، وأيضا هي قابلة للتعديل أو حسب الاتفاق ما بين الأطراف جميع بنود العقد. وهذا ما صدر في التعميم رقم 1/2020 من المدير العام الدكتور طارق بن هندي المدير العام لمكتب أبو ظبي للاستثمار، بحيث أنه يجوز للأطراف أيضا عمل التعديل ولكن حسب الاتفاق، ويجب اتباع القدر الأكبر من هذا نموذج عقد المساطحة الحالي. فبالتالي سأدعى الكلمة إن شاء الله لجيمي لبدء ذكر هذه النقاط الرئيسية. جيمي.
So we will now take you through 10 key areas where there have been changes, and again, these changes are generally driven by the private sector. And so we would trust these are investor-friendly changes that have been made, designed to help provide confidence to the investor in relation to these long-term Musataha agreements. So project milestones. The list of milestones that the investor has to achieve by certain dates in respect of the investor's works has been reduced or consolidated now to 4 milestones. These are the submission of concept plans and investor's development program, the submission of detailed plans, the substantial commencement of the investor's works, and the substantial completion of the investor's works.
طبعا بخصوص المراحل الرئيسية للمشروع تمت تعديلها من ناحية أن القائمة هذه المراحل الرئيسية التي يتوجب على المستثمر إنجازها بحلول تواريخ محددة فيما يتعلق بأعمال المستثمر، فبالتالي تم اختصارها على 4 مراحل رئيسية فقط، ألا وهي أولا تقديم مخططات التصميم التصوري وبرنامج التطوير الخاص بالمستثمر، وثانيا تقديم المخططات التفصيلية للمشروع. فبالتالي نلجأ للنقطة الثالثة ألا وهي المباشرة الأساسية لأعمال المستثمر، ورابعا وأخيرا هي الإنجاز الأساسي لأعمال المستثمر.
During our investor consultation, it became clear to us that bank guarantees were an issue. The bank guarantees in relation to the construction and operational phases of the investment project have been replaced with security deposits, as bank guarantees can be expensive for developers to procure and they require regular renewal. The security deposits will be held by the owner, the government department, as security for the due performance of the investor's obligations under the contract. The amount of each deposit will be determined on a case-by-case basis, depending on the value and scope of the project.
بخصوص الضمانات البنكية تم استبدال البند الذي يتضمن الضمانات البنكية المتعلقة بالمرحلتين الإنشائية والتشغيلية، وذلك بمبلغ التأمين فقط، حيث أن الضمانات البنكية كما نعلم تكون مكلفة بعض الشيء للمطورين للحصول على تجديد منتظم مع البنوك، فبالتالي تم استبدالها بمبلغ التأمين ويكون حسب الاتفاق ما بين الأطراف.
Project completion. The owner or government entity is to have less oversight over the investor's works and will not certify the practical completion of the investor's works. So much less government activity or involvement during this period. Instead, the key objective of the investor will be to achieve project completion. The definition of project completion is flexible and can be amended to provide both for projects involving investor construction and operation, as well as investor construction and letting to third parties.
طبعا بخصوص بند إنجاز المشروع يجب يعني احنا لجأنا إلى تعديل معين في هذا البند، بحيث أنه وضعنا بأن يجب يكون المالك فقط إشراف أقل على أعمال المستثمر، وألا يشهد ذلك على الإنجاز العملي لأعمال المستثمر. فبدلا من ذلك سيكون الهدف الرئيسي من إنجاز المشروع هو تحقيق إنجاز المشروع فقط. فبالتالي أن تعريف إنجاز المشروع يكون مرن ويمكن تعديله والاتفاق عليه ما بين الأطراف، فبالتالي هي ما تنطوي على طبعا الإنشاء التشغيلي المتعلق بالمستثمر فضلا عن الإنشاء المتعلق بالمستثمر. فبالتالي هي تكون محل اتفاق ما بين الطرفين، ولكن يكون في إشراف أقل للمالك على أعمال المستثمر.
Operational guidelines. The operational guidelines for the investor's use of the plot are to be agreed in advance of signing of the contract, and they'll be appended to the contract. Now, the owner will be permitted to update the guidelines, but only to the extent that updates are not inconsistent with the terms of the contract or materially adversely impact the investor's use of the plot. We see these as investor-friendly and welcome changes.
خصوص بند الإرشادات التشغيلية، فبالتالي أصبح يجب الموافقة على الإرشادات التشغيلية لاستخدام المستثمر لقطعة الأرض قبل توقيع العقد وإلحاقها بالعقد. فبالتالي سيسمح للمالك تحديث أيضا الإرشادات التشغيلية، ولكن في الحد فقط في الحد الأدنى، والذي لا تتعارض في مع التحديثات هذه مع شروط العقد أو تؤثر حتى سلبا أو جوهريا على استخدام المستثمر لقطعة الأرض. فبالتالي لابد من الاتفاق على الإرشادات التشغيلية مسبقا قبل التوقيع.
Alterations. During our investor discussions, it was clear that certain alterations were treated, whether they're structural or non-structural, in a similar manner. And investors informed ADIO that they would like to see more flexibility in relation to the treatment of alterations, particularly those where the alterations are of a non-structural nature and where the investor, through the practical common sense of the project, ought to be able to get on with those types of alterations without going through a lengthy government approval process. And so what we've done under these alteration provisions is allow for investors to have the right to make non-structural alterations, but they will require the prior written consent of the owner for structural alterations, which may not be unreasonably withheld or delayed, but they may come with additional reasonable conditions if granted.
طبعا بخصوص البند رقم 7 الفقرة رقم 2 بخصوص التعديلات، الآن أصبح التعديل يشمل أيضا من حق المستثمر القيام بتعديلات غير هيكلية دون الرجوع للمالك إن كانت غير هيكلية، لكن إن كانت هناك تعديلات هيكلية في المشروع فبالتالي لابد من موافقة خطية مسبقة من المالك.
Termination, always a favourite for lawyers and not so much for the commercial teams trying to negotiate these types of projects. But termination rights are important. However, we've simplified them in this new Musataha contract, and we've divided the termination regime into two parts. One for the construction phase and the other for the operational phase. Now, the owner's termination rights following a major breach by the investor have been split into these two phases. The owner's termination rights during the construction phase are more extensive so that the investor is incentivized to complete the project and not to land bank the plot. During the operational phase, the owner's termination rights are more limited and cure periods for the investor are longer, ensuring that the investor is better protected and its interest in the plot is more attractive to potential lenders.
طبعا بخصوص بند الإنهاء وهو من أهم البنود في عقد المساطحة النموذجي بين الطرفين، طبعا تم تقسيم حقوق المالك في الإنهاء إلى قسمين، وذلك إن كان بعد خرق الجوهري من قبل المستثمر إلى حقوق إنهاء كل من المرحلة التشغيلية المرحلة الإنشائية والتشغيلية المشروع. فبالتالي تكون حقوق المالك في الإنهاء أثناء مرحلة الإنشاء أكثر شمولا، يعني بحيث يتم تشجيع المستثمر لإنجاز هذا المشروع ليس لعرقلة إنجاز هذا المشروع. بالتالي في خلال المرحلة التشغيلية يختلف الأمر، إن كان المالك يحق للمالك أيضا الإنهاء، ولكن تكون الإنهاء محدود للمالك أكثر. فبالتالي نحن ندعم بأن يتم إنجاز هذا المشروع، ليس إلا أن يتم عرقلة الإنجاز. فبالتالي تم التقسيم إلى مرحلة إنشائية ومرحلة تشغيلية. يختلف الإنهاء إن كان خلال المرحلة الإنشائية وإن كان خلال المرحلة التشغيلية. فبالتالي خلال المرحلة التشغيلية يكون حظوظ المالك أقل وفي الإنهاء. فبالتالي ندعم المستثمر في أن يقوم بإنجاز هذا المشروع.
Both investors and financial institutions and lenders have informed ADIO that they would like to see lender protections included in the form of Musataha to more quickly and easily onboard finance into these projects, which are often expensive and require third-party capital. Lender protection provisions have been included and added to the contract, giving lenders the right to remedy major investor breaches prior to termination and to take a new Musataha over the plot following termination for a major investor breach. It's our view that these step-in rights and investor and lender protections make this document a more bankable document and a document more easily able to raise finance against. And we believe that also should be viewed as a positive for investors and financial institutions and government entities looking to combine to bring about successful projects.
قمنا بإضافة أحكام في حماية المقرض، فبالتالي أصبح المقرض له الحق في إما معالجة فروقات الجوهرية التي تحصل من قبل المستثمر التي تسبق الإنهاء، أو الحصول على أيضا من حق المقرض الحصول على مساطحة جديدة على قطعة الأرض بعد الإنهاء بموجب أي خرق جوهري من قبل المستثمر. فبالتالي هذا يكون موقف عادل مما يجعل هذا العقد قابل للتمويل فيما يتعلق بالدين وبضمان محدد.
Yield up. Obligations in regard to yield up have a significant financial and economic consequence for project owners. At the end of the term, the investor will either give back the plot on an as-is, where-is basis, or remove the building on the plot and return the bare land. Now, this protects the investor, as it cannot be required to put the building into a new condition on the expiry of the term. Now, the investor may wish to expressly specify the yield-up condition of the property required by the owner in advance of signing the contract, as this does have cost implications for the investor. And if so, the definition of exit condition in the particulars of the Musataha contract should be amended to reflect the condition of the property required by the owner as agreed with the investor on exit.
طبعا بخصوص بند الإخلاء والتسليم، أصبح الموضوع يكون باتفاق الطرفين قبل توقيع العقد. ففي نهاية المدة يتوجب على المستثمر إما بإرجاع قطعة الأرض على حالتها الراهنة وفي مكانها، أو بأن يزيل المبنى الذي على قطعة الأرض بحيث يعيد الأرض خالية من أي مبنى. فبالتالي الخيارين متاحين للأطراف حسب الاتفاق ويكون قبل توقيع العقد.
Gross floor area. Prior to substantial completion, prior to the investor building such additional area and subject to conditions, the owner and the investor may agree in writing to increase the GFA or gross floor area. The owner may grant its consent to an increase in the gross floor area on terms and conditions that it deems appropriate in its discretion. The contract includes a mechanism now whereby the owner may request an additional payment from the investor to be specified by the owner at the time of the negotiation, proportionate to the relevant increase in the GFA that is requested by the investor, providing that the increase in size is equal to or exceeds a specified percentage of GFA.
طبعا بخصوص المساحة الطابقية الإجمالية قبل إنجاز الأساسي، أصبح الموضوع الآن في التعديل الجديد أن قبل أن يبني المستثمر هذه المساحة الإضافية وفقا للشروط يجوز للمالك والمستثمر الاتفاق كتابة على زيادة المساحة الطابقية الإجمالية. فبالتالي يجوز المالك منح موافقته على زيادة هذه المساحة الطابقية الإجمالية، وطبعا وفقا للشروط والأحكام التي يراها مناسبة وفقا لتقديره المطلق. فبالتالي العقد يشتمل على آلية يمكن بموجبها للمالك أن يطلب دفعة إضافية من المستثمر، وذلك يتم تحديدها من قبل المالك طبعا حسب تقديره بما يتناسب مع الزيادة ذات الصلة في المساحة الطابقية الإجمالية.
Now, the flip of that is where the increase in GFA is beneath that threshold, and we've included a provision in the contract which speaks to a de minimis threshold, whereby an increase in the GFA, which is equal to or less than that percentage, does not require the owner's prior written consent to the change. Rather, the investor is to provide written notice of the change to the owner, citing the details of the change. Now, the percentage tolerance thresholds will vary depending on the project size, its value, etc., and shall be agreed commercially and inserted into the contract as appropriate. We see at the moment of a 3 to 5% range as being a fair de minimis range, although this is to be agreed, as I said, depending on the nature of the contract with the relevant government entity. And that de minimis amount, while low, does provide additional flexibility to the project owner, and allows that flexibility allows for changes within that de minimis to be able to be conducted without other approval processes that may bring some inefficiency or time unnecessarily into the execution and delivery of the project.
أيضا بخصوص المساحة الطابقية الإجمالية، لابد كما ذكرنا موافقة خطية مسبقة من المالك إن كان هناك أي تغيير في الحجم، بل أن بدلا من ذلك يجب على المستثمر تقديم شعار خطي مسبق للمالك بهذا التغيير في الحجم. فبالتالي نسبة المسامحة في التجاوز تكون تتباين على حسب قيمة وحجم المشروع، ويجب عليه الاتفاق، ويجب ذلك الاتفاق عليها تجاريا وإدراجها أيضا في معاني العقد.
Musataha premium. The contract includes a provision for a one-off advance payment on the contract date. For a particular contract, the investor is expected to pay either the Musataha premium or the Musataha fees, but not both. So this clarification and flexibility is included in the contract.
طبعا بخصوص أقساط المساطحة، كثير من المستثمرين يفضلون الدفع لمرة واحدة، مثل ما كان في السابق كان عبارة عن أقساط لقيمة المساطحة. فبالتالي أصبح للمستثمر إما أن بين خيارين، إما الدفع قيمة المساطحة لمرة واحدة دفعة واحدة، أو دفعها على شكل قسط سنوي. وشكرا جزيلا.
This concludes the legal section of our presentation. We hope you've enjoyed it. The specific enhancements, or Ali and Jamie's top 10, are there for you, and we'd be delighted to speak with any of you on a one-on-one basis, or to speak with you in our offices or over a call, should you have any particular queries on projects. Back to you, Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Jamie and Ali, for this informative presentation. We appreciate your time. I will now proceed to share some questions from the audience. And again, if you haven't yet submitted your questions, please refer to the top right corner of the screen, where we will gladly answer some of your questions. Thank you very much. Question number 1 that we received from Mr. Abjith Ali. Does the new enhancements to Musataha agreement include industrial land? I believe Mr. Muhammad Al-Zahiri will be the most suited to answer that question.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. So based on the resolution that actually came from the Executive Council, it said that the new Musataha contract should be used by all the government and companies within Abu Dhabi. But again, the Musataha contract was designed in a way that it can be adjusted and to suit both parties' need. So it's not a fixed thing. people can adjust it to make sure that it is much more suitable, for example, to the industrial sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our second question from the audience refers to the extent of the implementation of resolution number 49 of 2018 regarding the fees for municipal services. Jamie, would you be able to respond to this one, please?
The Musataha contract does not alter fees that are currently applicable by the resolution and by law. The new Musataha contract provides for changes in relation to Musataha fee and the premium concept that is now included in the document, but Musataha fees under the law have not been amended by the contract.
That's very clear. Thank you very much. Our third question from the audience. Thank you so much for your interaction. If foreign investment companies are allowed to acquire the right of Musataha and long-term lease outside the investment areas according to the decision issued, in the event that there's a Musataha contract prior to the date of the approved model, what is the impact on the contracts previously concluded? So who would be able to answer this question, gentlemen?
So allow me to jump in. There are a couple of items there, but I'll deal with one relating to the form of contract. The form of contract now has been issued pursuant to the Executive Council resolution requiring ADIO to issue the new form of Musataha contract. That is now available and should be the starting point for new projects. However, if an ongoing contractual negotiation is on foot, and the government department and the relevant investor have made progress on that, the law does not, nor does our resolution require that contract to be abandoned. And indeed, that could bring some inefficiency and frustration into a process. All new Musataha agreements going forward will contain and start from this template to be negotiated by the relevant government department and the investor.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jamie, for clarifying that point.
Let me cover the first point that was actually the question. So on the Musataha, usually based on the law of law number 19 of 2005, only companies that are owned 100% by local are allowed to invest within the land that are outside the investment land. I think there might be some potential on this to be changed, but currently, as where we stand, it's only local companies.
Right, that's very good. Thank you very much. All right, so we've got a very good question about the registration fees. So what are the registration fees for registering the Musataha, and which party pays? Can this be negotiated, gentlemen? Who will respond to this? So a very good question about negotiation. So what is the legal framework for this?
Look, I think at this point, and what we're here today to talk with the audience about is the form of Musataha contract. ADIO is not now replacing any form of registration or entity that accepts a fee. And so current protocols relating to the payment and acceptance of fees remain intact. What's important today is that the Musataha contract that we have been able to get out the door into the market with government entities and the private sector really does provide for flexibility that the private sector has been requesting, that government entities are eager to provide, and that should provide the right platform for future projects to be efficiently delivered and successful in Abu Dhabi.
That's great. Thank you very much, Jamie, for your input. We've got a very good question about land again. So does Zone Corp land come into this enhancement? So again, people are very excited and interested in this Musataha agreement. And one question is asking if Zone Corp comes into this enhancement.
So allow me to take this. So again, based on the resolution that came from the Executive Council, it's all the government and companies that are within the Abu Dhabi, that are owned by Abu Dhabi, should actually follow this Musataha contract. Thank you. So this would actually include Zone Corp.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mohammed Al-Lahiri. All right, fantastic. So Now, we've also got a question about the project itself. So what does a successful project by Musataha consist of? Maybe Mohammed Al-Zahiri can enlighten us on this.
So if we think about it, the Musataha projects are a long-term projects that need to be sustainable during the duration of the concession, whether it's 10 or, as we said, maximum 50 years. So in order for it to be successful, a proper market analysis, market demand should be actually done before the project is actually undergone. A proper financial model should be in place to make sure that there is no hidden obstacles that will be coming during the phase of the project. Again, a proper study will ensure that this project will be successful during the concession period. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad. We've got a question from Adrian. If a Musataha agreement is terminated during the construction period, is the investor liable to the landowner for Musataha fees or the balance of the term for the remaining period of the term?
Excellent question. So as I mentioned in the discussion, the termination rights have now been divided into two sections, one for the construction period and the other applicable to the operation period. So your question relates to the first period. Now, the changes that we've made in that first period allow for the investor to take steps to remedy the breach within 3 months of being notified of the breach, and to substantially satisfy that breach within 6 months. Now, if the investor has been unable to do that, and I think the most relevant examples here for us to look at in terms of the material breach are the milestones we mentioned. These are the particular milestones that must be satisfied by the investor as agreed with the government entity by the date set out in the Musataha contract. And quick reminder of those, we've got the submission of concept plans and the investor's development plan, the submission of detailed plans, the substantial commencement of the investor's works, and the substantial completion of the investor's works. Now, in that first phase, if within 3 months the investor has not taken steps to remedy the breach that is relevant to the termination, or has not substantially completed and remedied within 6 months, then there may be a termination at the discretion of the government. In that case, the government will, or the owner, can recover up to 1 year of the Musataha fee. They may also draw on the security deposit should there be any loss suffered in relation to the termination, and the investor rights in the plot or the project are transferred to the government entity or owner.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jamie. Again, I urge the audience to submit your questions and we will answer them hopefully before the end of the session. As you can see, our speakers are very keen to interact with you as much as possible. So we've got a question about the sectors. In what sectors or areas can a Musataha agreement be used? Mr. Mohammed Al-Zahiri, perhaps you can shed some light on this.
Thank you very much. So usually the sectors that Musataha agreement will be used are real estate sector, you have education sector, you have agriculture sector, and also you have industrial sector. Thank you very much.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Again, a wonderful question from Anjoy. What is the legal entity or structure that administers the Musataha agreement? Does this follow the same process as other lease agreements? And does it cover all areas in Abu Dhabi? Or is it applicable to any specific investment areas? So I think we've got 3 questions in this. Shall I break it out for you? The first question is, what is the legal entity structure that administers the Musataha agreement?
So again, I think I come back to the same answer as earlier given. This form of Musataha contract that has been issued does not change the current protocols in relation to regulation. There are a number of entities that will be involved in the regulation of the project, depending on the nature of the project. The important part of today is to ensure that each of the government entities that will be involved in the Musataha contract and the private sector now have a revised form of contract to be able to utilise to bring about those flexibilities that the investors require and need for successful delivery of projects in Abu Dhabi.
Thank you, Jamie. And the second part of this question is, does it follow the same process as other lease agreements?
Look, other lease agreements, I'm not quite sure exactly what the question's referring to. I mean, Musataha is a very specific type of long-term interest in land agreement. If we're talking about long-term leases in investment zones, for example, then broadly, yes, there is a similar process in relation to submission of commercial specs and opportunity descriptions relating to a project. There's a negotiation, the term sheets will be developed, and a form of contract delivered with respect to the parties. The Musataha contract itself is the form of contract in respect of what we're discussing today that you as an investor should expect to receive from the government entity should you be contracting with a government entity in relation to a long-term project.
That's very clear. Thank you very much. And we've got a question from, again, Anoy. Can foreign entities enter into these contracts, or are there restrictions in terms of legal or structure, in terms of the ownership?
The Mohammed's answer, I think, is the answer that prevails here. So Musataha rights are rights that can be awarded under the Civil Code to UAE entities or individuals. So foreign entities are not eligible for receipt of Musataha interests. Those entities are free to enter into long-term agreements in investment zones and those in ownership of assets in investment zones is possible and is what is conducted in the many investment zones across Abu Dhabi.
All right, that's fantastic. Thank you very much, Jamie. So we're final couple of questions here. So is the maximum term for 50 years, or are there options for renewals? So people are very keen here to renew their Musataha agreements. So are there options for renewals here?
So Musataha agreements can be renewed. The contract states that if the investor would like to renew the contract, then they should provide 24 months advance notice to the government entity in respect of any renewal. The term of the Musataha contract, or the length of the term, 50 years, is still, I believe, what you would see as being the later term. There are various views, I think, on renewal and options. For which I know there are a number of lawyers dialed into the call who would be delighted to speak with this particular individual or clients about renewal and extensions.
Absolutely. Stay tuned towards the end of the session where you will see our contact details, and please do not hesitate to reach out to us. So last couple of questions. Does the Musataha agreement allow for a bank or financier to provide debt to a project? I think, Jamie, can you address this one?
Yes, sure. So the Musataha contract now does contain several lender protections that you would see as being protections required for the document to be bankable. Now, those protections allow for a step-in by the lender in specific circumstances, particularly in relation to events that would terminate the Musataha, to either allow the bank or financier to step in and negotiate a new Musataha agreement, or to take over the existing assets. Now, there's a number of time periods that we see as being quite generous in relation to the decision and contemplation of a decision by a financier as to what to do in the scenario. And as I mentioned earlier also, there are extensive processes involved in relation to time periods for the investor themselves to be able to remedy. So we spoke briefly about the time periods for cure of a breach, a material breach that could give rise to a termination right in the construction period. Those periods double when it comes to the operational phase. So you have 6 months as an investor to commence the activities required to remedy the relevant breach in the post and operational period, and that goes to 12 months to actually remedy or substantially remedy that breach. So you combine those lender protections with the cure periods that we have there, and we believe that that's the right mix for the financiers and the investors to be able to sort out whatever the issues are relating to step-in rights and lender protections. And then you will see very standard other finance protections and rights of a lender set out in the documents relating to mortgages, encumbrances, etc., in favour of the lender. And we believe those should be satisfactory to lenders in Abu Dhabi. And while each of them will have their own forms of documentation that they would also no doubt like to discuss, these are good starting points and clearly contemplate financiers coming into these projects to support the private sector and the government in delivery of successful projects in Abu Dhabi.
All right, so in 10 seconds, please, gentlemen, how can ADIO help facilitate a Musataha project? Please, Mohammed, Jamie, and then Mr. Ali, please. In 10 seconds, please.
Over to you, Mohammed.
Sorry, what's the question again?
Mohammed, so how can ADIO help facilitate the Musataha projects?
So currently, I think what we can do at the time being is if an investor has any investment opportunities that he wants to actually explore, he can come to us. We can sit with him, see this investment opportunity, identify the entity that owns the appropriate land for that investment opportunity, and then we can help him and facilitate with him the engagement of this process with the procuring entity.
Great, thank you. Mr. Jamie.
Thank you very much.
We facilitate investment in Abu Dhabi, including in respect of Musataha. This is our purpose, our role, our function, and our passion. If you have Musataha ideas, bring them to us. We will help.
Yes, thank you very much for that very, very good summary of ADIO's services in Musataha. Right, Mr. Ali, would you mind giving us a 10-minute summary?
We will support the both parties to engage the Musataha agreement and to complete the whole project. And whatever they have, we are here. We will provide them with even any support legally or as the investment team here, inshallah.
Absolutely. You heard it from here. ADIO is here to help you and help the investors establish and be successful from Abu Dhabi. Mr. Saif, Mr. Hussein, and Mr. Asaf, thank you very much for your questions. However, we've run out of time. Please reach out to us on our contact details you will see at the end of the session. I must now conclude the webinar. We hope you found this engaging discussion and exciting and insightful for all of you. For any questions, like I mentioned, you will see our data questions at the end. Reach out to us on our social handles or our emails, and our team will be more than happy to get in touch with you to help you be successful in Abu Dhabi. Thank you very much, and we look forward to you in our next webinars. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.